details about URBiNAT, I would like to invite our colleagues from ECOSOL, who are with our partner in this event, to welcome you also.
Hi everyone, my name is Luciane. I'm a researcher at the Center for Social Studies, such as Nathalie, Beatriz, Pedro, and I co-coordinate the ECOSOL SES, the group, the study group for Solidarity Economy at SES, together with my colleague Pedro Espanha. We have organized this event together with URBiNAT project, and we are very glad to receive you today to discuss all these issues regarding environmental justice, regarding solidarity economy, regarding architecture and urban planning in a different manner. So thank you all for coming and join us in this discussion. And I hope you all have a great moment with us.
Thank you, Luciane. Thank you, ECOSOL. Beatriz and Fabio, can you just confirm that the recording of the session has just started?
I already asked to Tom to start the recorded the session. Can you confirm, Tom? Because you is the hoster.
Yep, I think we can confirm that. In any case, the live stream is now working as it should be. So yeah, that's fine.
And
I'll click to record.
So this is streaming in YouTube, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So because I do not see the symbol of recording, I'm afraid that we lose a little bit of this record. But that's okay. Let's go in. So, as already mentioned, URBiNAT is a project funded by the European Union. It tackles urban regeneration, in 7 European cities. Okay, so we just received the announcement that the meeting is being recorded.
Exactly.
So we have 7 European cities in the project: Porto in Portugal, Siena in Italy, Sofia in Bulgaria, Nantes in France, Nova Gorica in Slovenia, Brussels in Belgium, and Odžetastrup in Denmark. But through its community of practice, which includes observers, the project also resonates in Iran, Brazil, China, Oman, and Japan. So URBiNAT's proposal is to co-create healthy corridors in the public space, connecting social neighborhoods or disadvantaged residential areas based on the co-creation of nature-based solutions with citizens. URBiNAT's community of partners consists of an international consortium of 28 partners from 15 countries, gathering cities, experts, practitioners, companies, research centers, and university. So as such, URBiNAT's partners bring together different perspectives, expertise, and experience in the academic, political, and technical fields. So as an EU-funded project, URBiNAT responds to the requirements of a call for proposals on the demonstration of innovative nature-based solutions in cities, with some conceptual and methodological common basis to all the projects funded in this call. First, nature-based solutions, that is by innovating with nature to achieve more sustainable and resilient societies, benefiting from the biodiversity to support the delivery of a range of ecosystem services. Second, based on a co-process, which is systemic and iterative, but also transdisciplinary and community-based, by means of co-creation, including diagnostic, design, implementation, monitoring and evaluation, as well as management. And third, the cities, who are follower and frontrunner, both including European and non-European cities as observers, and focusing on specific intervention areas, which will enable replication and upscaling, but also requires long-term commitment from cities, both political and financial. So, okay, so URBiNAT is coordinated by the Center for Social Studies of the University of Coimbra. It is a 5-year project which started in 2018. The actions developed in the frame of URBiNAT focus on the public space to co-create with the citizens new urban, social and nature-based relations within and between different neighborhoods. URBiNAT's LC corridors take the full physical, mental and social well-being of citizens as its main goal. So URBiNAT aims to co-plan a LC corridor in each city as an innovative and flexible nature-based solution, which itself integrates a large number of micro NBS emerging from community-driven design processes. So URBiNAT's co-creation process, as you see in this figure, has 4 stages: co-diagnostic, co-design, co-implementation, and co-monitoring. The front-runner cities are now developing their project of LC corridor, entering the co-implementation stage, and the follower cities enter the co-diagnostic stage, but have been networking, sharing knowledge, experience, and interest since the beginning with our community of practice. Entering now nature-based solutions. As an initial definition, nature-based solutions are solutions that seek to respond to social, economic, and environmental challenges through sustainable alternatives. It relates to actions inspired, supported, and produced from nature, strengthening existing solutions or exploring new solution models. The solution, they address gray, green, and blue infrastructure, but also social structures, relations, and dynamics. URBiNAT's catalog of nature-based solutions as an initial input and inspiration for co-creation challenges the conventional definition of nature-based solutions by not only integrating solutions inspired by nature, such as the territorial and technological ones, comprising products and infrastructures, but also including participatory solutions, as well as social and solidarity economy solutions comprising processes and services. This reinforces the dialogue between the physical structure and the social dimension of the public space. And this happens through the dimension of participation and of social and solidarity economy. So now Beatrice will develop a little bit more this aspect of the project that our event is focusing on today. Beatrice, I stop sharing the screen and you share yours.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Nathalie. I will share my screen just to put in presentation mode. Can you see my screen as well? Okay. Thank you again. Welcome to all. My name is Beatriz. I think Nathalie already introduced some aspects for my role in the project, but again, I'm research in the URBiNAT project with Nathalie, Gonçalo, Fab, and the other colleagues. Also, I'm a member of Ecosol group. First, I would like to thank you for all that we will participate in this online seminar series during the 3 days, today, on Friday and on Monday. So thank you. Also to thank you for the speakers who kindly accepted our invitation, namely the Ecosol group, the members of URBiNAT Commission, Scientific Commission, some international networks such as REPES is here also join with us today, local associations, and of course the URBiNAT partners implementation of a health corridor in the city. Thank you for all. I would like to introduce some general aspects about solidarity economy, just to refer in terms of the context of solidarity economy in terms of concept and practice. The context of emergence of solidarity economy occurs above all with the decreasing satisfaction of populations' needs in the capitalist systems, which is increasingly distant from its social network and its commitment to the community. A capitalist economy based on private ownership of the means of production, competition, and maximizing profits. As a consequence, we are witnessing the perpetuation of poverty in scenarios of economic crisis and the neoliberal crisis. Solidarity economy as a concept emerged in the 1990s when, on the initiative of citizens, producers, and consumers, numerous organized economic activities emerged. Its distinctive aspects are: first, establish means of production shared by all. Second, the common interest prevails over the individual interest. Third, its main objective is not profit, but solidarity and cooperation in pursuit of the good life of all. The goods and services produced are recognized at their value in use. Therefore, in this model, economic activities are organized according to principles of cooperation, autonomy, and democratic management. There are several types of practice that emerged and quickly multiplied in various forms, such as in common generation collectives, popular canteens, production and marketing cooperatives, exchange networks and clubs, proximity services, indigenous productive communities, consumption groups, exchange circuits with social currencies, community bank, complementary currencies, short circuits, popular mutualities, cultural currencies. Also, from the field of solidarity finance, modalities already recognized such as cooperatives, cooperative bank, cooperative savings or credit bank, microfinance, microcredit, microdeposits, common bank, ethical finance, social currency, local exchange systems, or namely LETs, community banks, banks of hours or time bank, community savings, solidarity fairs, and markets. Solidarity economy practice arise in a dynamic context already fed by the historical trajectory of the so-called other economies, and new economies such as mutual economy, community economics, social economy, feminist economics, popular economy, the growth economy, and more recently, economy of Francisco and Clara. Many times recognized this as synonym of social economy. Indeed, the solidarity economy generates more visibility to the economic community based initiatives, including informal initiatives based on co-managed and self-managed models. But our questions in the URBiNAT project our proposal is to establish more relation between solidarity economy and the public urban space. So, and our central question is, how does the solidarity economy contribute to the urban regeneration of neighborhoods? URBiNAT approaches to urban regeneration has as one of its pillars the social and the solidarity approach to the economy, which introduce sustainable logic of cooperation and solidarity in complement to profit logic, change the model of profit distribution. URBiNAT recognize the social and solidarity economy as an opportunity to build a different space and to analyze its complexity, to review the multidimensional and intersectional causes behind inequalities and the fragmentation in the cities, to enhance the impact of NBS or network-based solution, and to adopt an active and reflective stance on issues such as exclusion and on the role of political and private social actors. Also, changes in power relations through the revigoration of the notion of community, the creation of different forms of self-organization and solidarity among social groups, and the expansion of meaningful practice that reinvent decision-making mechanisms. From a holistic conceptual viewpoint of the network-based solution concept, we propose the idea that social and solidarity economy expands the NBS some of its key dimensions, contributed to an inclusive urban regeneration in 4 aspects. From economy side, considering its substantial influence on the segregation of the territories, the solidarity economy questioning the naturalization of certain inequalities and put some lens on access equity to the resource, the common goods. Through the associated work, all subjects can address their needs of subsistence upon finding in solidarity economy appropriate solutions to their conditions of living. From network perspective, there is an interdependent relationship between solidarity economy and network, either for a fairer and more conscious production and consumption perspective, or in the proximity between rural and urban contexts that advocates a sustainable environment and new solutions. About social relations, the democratic management fosters a political capacity of the community, new ways of sociability and urbanities, creating a differential community social space made by citizens. And from urban perspective, the social and solidarity economy expands the functionality of public space, diversifying the way citizens use them, reveals a strong territoriality and connection to physical space. It may range from individual self-provision and informal small-scale economic circuits localized and operating within a limited territorial scope to networking on a large area, region, or national level. So, as suggested, I will propose some solidarity economy NBS practice, and based, of course, partners' expertise. URBiNAT seeks to promote in the cities within the health corridor solidarity markets for children that promote new ways of consuming goods and services based on reciprocity, solidarity, and justice, change individual and collective behaviors based on other consumption criteria already experienced since childhood, or solidarity markets and fairs, promoting consumption through the combination of shared management and collective consumption practice, expand the functionality of public space, and building a space for debate and political articulation to face community social problems through the solidarity markets and fairs. Or also, you propose to implement in the health corridor community social currencies. The social currencies expand access to goods and services and to the bonds of mutual trust between all stakeholders engaged in the health corridor and the activities, in urban activities. Local currencies for network to enhance local transactions thanks to a local currency that boost proper waste separation practice. To improve the currencies can be used as discount in commerce, retailers, or for paying municipal taxes, or to improve the transition towards network-based local ecosystems through the implication of local administration and stakeholders in a systemic way. Also Bread House Network, collective preparing and sharing of food facilitate community building, bread as a symbol of peace and unity, and the bread making foster cooperation, collective experience across cultures, professions, and ages. Also Farmers Markets Network builds local social networks, brings together farmers and consumers. Farmers Markets Network shortens supply chains and allows sharing and keeping knowledge, practice, and values. Nevertheless, it is important to strengthen the political and the social project of the solidarity economy. For this, we considering there are still some contemporary challenges to the solidarity economy, and probably during the roundtable of today, we will discuss these contemporary challenges. One of that is the dispute for space with new concepts often works as a new guise of traditional capitalist logics. The urgency for recognition, since many spontaneous, democratic, and emancipatory practices not institutionalized are not recognized, such as in the Portuguese case, increase the feasibility of its components in which it is possible to identify circular and collaborative practice as principles of solidarity economy since its emergence. So this is some contemporary challenges that we will put in the table to discuss, and we will continue to discuss around these topics during the seminar, during those three days. On seminar, about seminar overview, we will discuss you will have 3 intense days of the seminary. In the first day, we pretend to discuss urban public space, common justice, and social reproduction with the participation of the colleagues from SES, from Ecosol, and from RIPES, and also from ISCTE, University from Portugal, and who is member of Scientific Commission of URBiNAT. On Friday, we pretend to discuss the social economy practice for neighborhoods revitalization and present the experience from URBiNAT and other experience from Spain in particular, and change some thoughts and change experience with sisters project, namely EdCityNet. And the third day of the seminar, on Monday, 7, we pretend to discuss the sustainability of network-based solution and the solidarity economy. Today, sorry, something, I can't move the, okay, sorry, now. For today, the first round table count with the participation of researchers, activists, university professors, and pretend to open the debate on feminist perspective, neighborhoods, dynamic, they rethink the public space through the commons conceptualization, and also to discuss the networks and environment issues with the role played by different networks and international networks. Just to finish, to finalize or to finish this first part, we would like to share a sentence from Paulo Freire. I think of course, is one of the major educators of the 20th century, committed with excluded people and inequalities. Our wish is that this sentence could inspire the discussion and reflexive dimensions during this online seminar. knowledge does not extend from what is thought to be known to those who think they do not know. Knowledge is constituted in man-world relations, transforming relations, and is perfected in the critical problematization of these relations. Thank you. I would like to give the floor to Laetitia Boone from Brussels Municipality and also URBiNAT partners who will moderate the first roundtable. Thank you. Thank you, Laetitia, for this support for us.
With pleasure. Thank you, Bishan. Thank you, Natalie, also for the wonderful introductions, as always. I hope you can hear me well. So I'm Laetitia. I'm a partner of URBiNAT. I'm the project coordinator at the City of Brussels, so coordinating the putting in place of the Living Lab of URBiNAT in Brussels. I'm also fresh out of my studies, where I did a lot of research actually on practices of dwelling and building and being in public space in Maputo, where I grew up. So I'm very interested in the presentations that we're going to get today. And yeah, so I'm an anthropologist and a human geographer and currently working for a municipality. So I guess I get the academic and the theoretical perspectives in this case. I will present all of the speakers just before they speak. Every person will get about 15 minutes to present their case and present their points of discussion. Feel free as a participant to put your questions in the chat during the presentations. We'll have a moment to discuss at the end, hopefully 40 minutes if our timing is good. And if not, you can also intervene, of course, verbally at the end. We'll try to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak. We will be taking a short break in between the speakers at some point to stretch our legs and grab a coffee if you feel like that is needed, or some water. I know in Brussels it's very warm today, so I might be grabbing water myself. Our first speaker is Pedro España, who is a researcher at Ecosol and SEJ. You'll be giving a talk on inclusive and dynamic neighborhoods through solidarity economy. Pedro España is a sociologist and founding member of SEJ and a member of URBiNAT Scientific Commission. He's a retired professor at the Faculty of Economics of Coimbra and a visiting professor at several foreign universities. He participates as a main researcher and PI in several national and international research projects and research networks, dealing with active social policies, social exclusion and poverty, employment and unemployment experiences and strategies. Since 2008, he is coordinating the research group on solidarity economy at SEJ, and his research interests include rural studies, social policies, sociology of medicine, poverty, and social exclusion. Pedro, the floor is you for 15 minutes, and I'll raise my hand once you have 1 minute left.
Thank you, Laetitia. Yeah, thanks also if you send me 2 minutes before the end of, because I'm really in a hurry to present my presentation. My first words is to congratulate the URBiNAT coordination for this idea of creating this stimulating online seminar series. This is the first one that we are now beginning, but it's a great expectation on the results of this debate that is prepared. And I'm very glad to participate in this first seminar that all we expect us it will be very fruitful. My contribution will be to identify some of the more critical issues when we associate solidarity economy and urban regeneration. I'm inspired by the main strategic goals of the URBiNAT agenda. URBiNAT agenda, main goal is inclusive and dynamic urban regeneration of deprived housing neighborhoods. That are different strategic objectives, and I picked from different documents to stress some that I really see as very, very promising. First one is to promote social cohesion and well-being. Second, to address the specific needs of vulnerable social groups. Third, to regenerate beyond the usual practice of city planning. I'm wondering about what this means. Maybe lack of critical thinking about solutions, or primacy of technical knowledge over local knowledge. All of this we have opportunity to debate. The fourth is to involve citizens in a co-creation process, from co-diagnostic to co-design. Fifth, to empower communities, and sixth, to expand the concept of NBS in order to integrate social and solidarity solutions. I have some slides to ease my task, and I will put this in. My slides, just a moment. Here are my slides. They didn't appear, not yet. Sorry. No, yeah, just a detail. Yeah, oh. And let's begin with this first issue, or critical issue. This is about the need for an institutionalist approach to the urban neighborhoods, and namely for urban neighborhoods economy. As the important sociologist, founder of the School of Chicago, pointed out in 1915, more than 1 century ago, neighborhood is a locality with sentiments, traditions, and a history of its own. This is important because it means that urban neighborhoods are a set of complex socioeconomic and emotional relations instead of a mere space for living. Economic relations and social relations are not separate spheres in the everyday life of the community, and consequently, labor occupations, as well as decisions about basic livelihood, are largely dependent on the rules and values that prevail in the stable and consolidated communities. I qualify this kind of communities as stable and consolidated because it is in this stability situation that values are recreated and developed. So, of course, yeah, socioeconomic relations are marked by a high level of informality, resulting from a combination of factors such as interknowledge, whole transparency, and shared life experience. Now about solidarity. Community-based initiatives are dependent on solidarity ties made of common interests, reciprocity, and trust. But solidarity refers to horizontal, symmetrical, and democratic ties uniting people as equals. Now, this democratic solidarity is distinct from solidarity based on values of charity, of altruism, and philanthropy. And we can say that corporate ethics, corporate social responsibility, social entrepreneurship, and social volunteering are the most common expressions of this other type of solidarity that is asymmetrical and paternalistic. But saying this, they coexist often and have both a relevant role to play. But the genesis the philosophy and trajectory of two forms of solidarity are quite distinct, and to some extent they are competing. Now, the third issue is about potentialities and limits of solidarity economy. We know that solidarity economy is about economic practice based on cooperative work, democratic management, and peer-to-peer solidarity. Solidarity economy initiatives are very old. Some are identified as social action in popular economy, both in rural and urban areas. But they have been adjusting to new contexts and resist to adverse incorporation, both by the market economy and by the state social policy. Joining together powerless groups and social movements, it allows for a more fair, more sustainable, and more humane alternatives to capitalism. Being a common strategy for better living, solidarity economy as an opportunity to improve the living conditions and to move forward emancipation in deprived urban neighborhoods. And additionally, solidarity economy has a clear transformative dimension that may operate as a tool for social recognition and for the empowerment of marginalized social groups. I skip this. I will go fast because there are no any time, and I have seven issues. The fourth one is transformative, precisely this transformative dimension of the solidarity economy. This dimension, which is not always assumed as such, is identified with a strong willingness to transform conditions of life by democratizing the economy and by enlarging the public space. It manifests itself in different ways. For instance, as a resistance to a system of social and economic relations that favors the position of those who have more resources and more power, as a new meaning for the democratic space by increasing the deliberative power of the individuals and their right to the city, and as a very diverse range of practices of political expression, be them protests against abuses, demands for justice, self-resolution of community problems, grassroots movements, etc. So solidarity economy initiatives are first a space for associative life and collective liberation. They operate as schools of democracy, as poles for the defense of the public interest, as drivers of civic involvement. Second, they are a project for democratization of economy, forged by economic practice, aimed to solve people's daily life problems and based on the creation and dissemination of a democratic and participatory culture. And third, they operate as communicative space, developing citizens' abilities to sustain debates, to solve conflicts, or to establish consensus among individuals with different values, with different interests, and different identities. And the fifth is about the relationship of solidarity economy and the state. Do you really need a public policy for solidarity economy? Well, first, public policies for solidarity economy are the result of an institutional recognition of the positive role of these initiatives compared to market economy. In this sense, several objectives may be present, or different measures, policy measures. Training people from new initiatives through university, for instance, through university-based incubators, or through appropriated technologies, or reducing bureaucracy in process of recognition and support for the initiatives, encouraging the development of solidarity-based financial system, promoting local development through the solidarity economy initiatives, or training local development agents who can link community initiatives to municipal or central administration decision making, and finally creating demand for those initiatives through public procurement policies. The sixth is about dialogue and collaboration with local government bodies. Solidarity economy deals with problems that neither state nor market solves in a satisfactory way, namely urban degradation. Despite that, some countries recognize the existence of the solidarity economy and offer some support to their initiatives, more or less exempt from obligations. This is a crucial issue, to be exempt or not from obligations. Nevertheless, it is questionable whether a broad recognition of solidarity economy is sufficient, or whether there is a need for more specific policies to assist its development. The fact is, a number of people are convinced that rules and regulation can be an obstacle to the free development of alternative economic initiatives, not only the solidarity economy, but some other economies. How? By reducing their heterogeneity or forcing them to associate with market-oriented forms of business. These are the obligations coming from policies. In fact, institutional recognition is an ambivalent process. It implies at the same time a submission of solidarity economy initiatives to systemic integration and only partial recognition of its instituting power is made. As a leader of a neighborhood in Lisbon pointed out, when the need is great, and in neighborhoods it happens a lot, those out of system, autonomous, and creative responses are part of neighbors' DNA. And that is precisely what the system itself tries to annihilate. It is all these responses that make the state afraid, and at the same time, that can create important bonds between us, that's to say, the different neighbors and different territories. Taking this into account, the state must recognize community initiatives and respect their collective nature without trying to institutionalize or to co-opt them. The financial burden for the state shouldn't be an excuse, because a small amount of investment may solve a fair amount of essential needs according to the hierarchy of needs in deprived neighborhoods. Moreover, the state can play a very positive role, for instance, by adjusting fiscal rules or by democratizing access to services or accepting community forms of the fundraising and credit allocation out of the banking system. And finally, a crucial question. May solidarity economy be a key driver of urban renewal? Quite often, the implementation of the solidarity economy initiative faces serious difficulties because the community seems not to be interested or to be reluctant to get involved in the projects. Maybe we need to give a positive meaning to this resistance to technical proposals or financial aid that are supposedly good and interested. The resistance should act as a warning sign to detect and prevent negative effects for neighborhoods that promoters were not aware of. may be resistances that are due to communicative failure, such as the inability to generate trust in the community. But the most important is to prevent that time pressure serves as a reason to minimize the resistances, to confuse doubts with obstinacy, or to postpone the resolution of problems until when the intervention has become irreversible. So these are the issues that I expect we can have the opportunity to debate. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Pedro. That was a really wonderful intervention. And I'm sure we'll have many, many things to discuss indeed at the end. We're going to reorganize the list of speakers a little bit because of people needing to come and go. So we're going to first have Jose, who will present, and then Jason, and then we'll take a short break, and then we'll have Luciana and then Rogerio last, if that's all right. So Jose, if that's all right, I will present you and then give you your 15 minutes. So Jose Castro Caldas from SESH is going to discuss today the commons and the market, or the virtue of impure orders, a term that intrigues me very much. Jose is an economist and a researcher at the Collaborative Laboratory for Work, Employment and Social Protection, Colabor, and at the Center for Social Studies, SESH, at Coimbra University. He is an assistant professor at the economics department of ISCTE in Lisbon and has taught and researched, among other subjects, on the history and philosophy of political economy. His present main research interests include personal and collective deliberation, institutional economics, and the history of economics. Jose, the floor is yours.
Your micro is mute, Professor. Sorry.
We still cannot hear you. Ah.
I'm here now.
There we go.
Thank you very much, URBiNat. Thank you, Beatrice, in particular, for the invitation. I have to confess I will be using my 15 minutes to address the theme that was proposed to me, which is the commons. I'm unsure on how this relates to your work in URBiNat, but we shall see if it indeed may relate. So let me just start by stating the usual framing of discussions on the commons stemming from neoclassical economics. This such framing is based in a dichotomic conception of goods and of governance regimes, according to which, on the one hand, we would have private goods governed by private property exchanges in a market setting, and on the other hand of the dichotomy, we would have public goods governed by a hierarchy of some type. Any other alternative type of goods or of governance regimes is excluded by neoclassical economics. Only two principles of order are recognized: separation and command, with separation referring to society as a collection of self-contained atomistic entities whose choices and actions are understood by reference to subjective desires and beliefs, which are unaffected by the presence of others, and whose interactions are merely commercial, self-interest seeking. And with command, in turn, referring to the subordination of individuals at the bottom of the hierarchical ordering of society, the surrender of their autonomy, and the attribution of the prerogative of making decisions and enforcing them to authoritative individuals at the top. Normatively, neoclassical, and by the way also Austrian economics, views separation, meaning the market, as superior, as liberating, and it views command as undesirable, as oppressive, And in practice, it takes separation as the ideal reference point that ought to guide institutional design, and it views command as an imperfect substitute to separation to be adopted only by necessity whenever the market fails. Out of this framing emerged the tales of the commons as a tragedy, and solutions to this tragedy that may only be separation, as in Dempset's paper, or command in Hardin's more famous one. More recently, however, this dichotomic view, actually of social order, has been challenged from within economics by Elinor Ostrom and colleagues, as you surely know. In their work, an alternative to separation and command, let's call it association, might be conceived as a viable and even preferable alternative to separation and command. Association is denoting here voluntary action of individuals toward common goals involving a balanced assignment of rights and duties among all concerned, and presupposing the capacity of individuals to communicate, identify common goals, conceive themselves as part of a team, and commit to act accordingly in a way which not only might be possible, I repeat myself, but preferable to separation or command. Ostrom, as we know, established not only the possibility, but the enabling conditions for sustainable cooperation in the use of common pool resources. That is, the possibility of association as an alternative to either separation or command. Meanwhile, and more recently, beyond the tragedy of the commons, other tragedies have emerged. Michael Heller, for instance, in 1998, wrote of a tragedy of the anti-commons, stating the possibility of underuse of a resource when too many owners hold the right to exclude others from the use of the resource. Moral modalities of such tragedy, we may call it the tragedy of separation, had already been noted. Hardin himself had written that every new enclosure of the commons involves the infringement of somebody's personal liberty. And Elizabeth Anderson elaborated on the notion that some freedoms can only be exercised in spaces over which no individual has more control than others. These are public spaces of free association among equals. Tragedies of command, in turn, have long been a target of a long liberal tradition which has denounced command from every possible angle as inefficient in respect to providing goods and securing prosperity, as detrimental of innovation, and as first and foremost antithetical with the overriding moral value of individual liberty. And tragedies have also been evoked in connection with association, related to the fact that the preconditions for association, for instance, in the use of common pool resources, rely on the exclusion of strangers to the community, or even worse, they may result as morally corrupting when associative motivations are directed against others external to the community, or when associative government regimes degenerate into either command or separation, authoritarian hierarchies or quasi-markets under the pressure of institutional isomorphism. In sum, no type of order, practically and theoretically, be it separation, command, or association, seems to be immune to the possibility of tragic outcomes. This suggests that the proclivity to tragic outcomes may be a feature of pure orders, not as claimed by neoclassical economics, deviations from the ideal of separation, or as in Hardin, absence of command. Reminiscent of Polanyi's critique of market society as distinct from a society in which markets are embedded in a broader and plural institutional setting, the proclivity to tragic outcomes of different orders, of different pure orders, may reside not on their plurality and potential inconsistency or incompleteness, but in attempts to made at purifying them under the hegemony of any single principle of order. Indeed, rarely, if ever, in the real world, orders stand alone in pure form, but rather coexist in overlapped layers. The commons, for instance, as we know them in Portugal under the form of baldios, has always been a mixed provision regime involving association in appropriation of the common pool resources and a family economy geared towards self-provision and even very often also geared towards market provision, overlapping the commons. In this mixed use and provision regime, the requirement of command imposed by Hardin as a precondition for sustainable use of the commons appears as non-existent, as artificial. In the commons, as they stand in the real world, appropriation is regulated by impersonal and universal norms, but decisions on provision are made by autonomous decision-making units. The regime is impure in that it combines on the one hand association in appropriation and on the other separation in provision. The linkage of the fate of individuals and their families to the overall state of the commons and their autonomy in searching the best means to make the most of the available resources features as a strong cement connecting and composing self-seeking motivations and public concerns, and may partly account for the long story of success of the commons in several geographies and cultures. So let me conclude by just enumerating a number of reasons to assert that impure, overlapping orders may be superior to pure orders, both in moral and practical terms. First, in mixed regimes, the community defines how the common resources may be appropriated by its members, but refrains from determining what is to be done with the goods appropriated. The institutional setting allows both for the pursuit of a shared goal in cooperation with others, the maintenance of the common resource, and at the same time the self-seeking quest for the best valuation possible of production, either through the market or in family use. Conflicts between the private and the public spheres, which may possibly arise, are to be addressed in the frame of the rules established by the community. Arguably, individuals in such impure institutional settings would be socialized into apprehending the shared value of resources maintained in association, which is dependent on other people also enjoying them, and the use value they attach to goods, which is connected to the freedom to dispose them at will. The institutional setting would tend to nurture in individuals both prudence in their private sphere and the disposition to engage in collective action in their public or civic capacities. Second, one implication of the existence of multiple decision-making units with some degree of autonomy overlapping the commons is that the exploration of the resources performed in parallel by multiple users, possibly in diverse forms, contrary to the alternative possibility of uniformity induced by command. The parallel exploration would result then in diversity within the system, enhancing its adaptive capacity. As highlighted by research on complex adaptive systems, parallel exploration, when combined with information transmission and learning, facilitates innovation to cope with change. Third, the degeneration of association into authoritarianism or its appropriation by power figures is countered in this mixed setting by the plurality of concerns and the distribution of power allowed by relative autonomy of the users. Fourth, the diversity within the system allowed by the parallel and decentralized exploration of resources enables diversification and redundancy, avoiding that local failures at some points of the system result in overall systemic failure. This is what I mean by impure orders and the arguments I'm at the moment able to put forward in defense of such perspective. Just trying to show that against the present trend to purify society under the hegemonic rule of the market, spelling, in my view, disaster, not only a broad scope of theoretical possibilities are conceivable, but also a weight testing by citizens' initiatives like URBiNAT. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. That was a very rich conceptual framework, I find, to understand the commons, and I think it will help us indeed to discuss also the role of economic practices and to really try and understand in other ways these messy realities that we're observing in the living labs. At least for me, I find that very valuable. We'll move now to Jason's presentation. So a quick introduction again. So Jason Nardi is going to present on RIPESH and the role played by EU networks towards environmental issues within the public agenda. He is part of the RIPESH Europe network. He is president of RIES, also an Italian solidarity economy network, and co-founder of Solidarius Italia. He has a background in communication and media at Princeton University and a master's degree from the University of Florence. He's a general delegate at the RIPESH EU, the Solidarity Economy Europe, and former coordinator of the International Board of Directors at RIPESH as well. He is currently an active member of the International Council of the World Social Forum and promoter of the World Social Forum on Transformative Economies. He's a former director of Unimundo, the Italian center of OneWorld.net, and has worked in the Fondazione Finanza Etica and the annual Terra Futura event. Finally, he promotes currently projects of community-supported agriculture, mutualism in Florence, and the Forum Firenze Beni Comuni, the Florence Commons Forum. I'm very much looking forward to this presentation as well. The floor is yours, Jason.
Thank you, Leticia, and thanks for inviting me to this first session. I must say that also my intervention will be quite different from the others. I don't have the academic background of others. I'm more of a hands-on networker and activist. But of course, I will refer to the principles and ideas that are at the basis of social and solidarity economy, which is what RIPESH, the network I represent, promotes. Let me see if I can share my presentation here. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, so I will try to give you an overview of what we're trying to do as RIPESH, but mainly in connection with other European networks and campaigns today to influence the public agenda and looking with of course, a focus between the local and the more translocal and transnational dimensions. So the European dimension, of course, is what we use as reference. See if I can proceed to the next slide. So just a few words on RIPES. Can you see the slide on RIPES? Okay. So RIPES is a network of networks that is of territorial networks and circuits of a solidarity economy, of sectoral networks, for instance, those who work on agroecological production, those who work on energy, renewable energy communities, those who work on co-housing and community or cooperative habitat, and many others. And it has arisen from a long process of bringing together different forms of organizations and practices in all the different continents around the world. It started just before the new millennium in Latin America, and it has a strong influence of the whole pedagogy of liberation and the movements that took place in Latin America. So today we talk about solidarity economy because there was that movement that influenced us all over the world and brought together the more traditional forms of social economy and mutualistic forms, cooperative forms of alternatives to the market economy. And RIPES Europe is only 10 years old. Actually, in September, we will celebrate our 10th anniversary, and it brings together several territorial, sectoral, intersectoral networks around 21 of the European countries. I won't go through the different members, but they're a very heterogeneous kind of networks. In Portugal, you have, for instance, REDPES, which is the Solidarity Economy Network of Portugal, the national network, and others like Animar and Crisasor. In Spain, there's a very organized form of networks as well, REAS, la Red de Economía Alternativa y Solidaria. And so in Italy and France and in some other countries where national networks have developed, in other countries, mainly in Eastern Europe or Northern Europe, this has not happened yet. So there are more hubs or connections with some sectoral networks. What is the strategy of a network like RIPES? Well, we can sort of summarize it in 3 parts. The first is to promote these territorial ecosystems in which the relationship between cities and the urban space is very important, and where the community practices are linked with the activity of influencing local public authorities and creating alternative local markets and intercooperation. The second level was mentioned before about the importance, but also trickiness of having an institutional recognition of social solidarity economy or of solidarity economy itself. In some countries, this has happened thanks to the work and the advocacy of the national networks. So there are laws that recognize or frame what SSE is, and not just as a sector of the economy, but in many places this doesn't exist. So you only have the recognition of some forms of, for instance, cooperatives or social enterprises. And that by itself does not constitute a solidarity economy. It's just some aspects of it. And the third is the promotion of a movement, which is a plural movement, and it is a transformative movement. So what we want is not to create a third or fourth sector of the economy. It's actually influencing the whole system and transforming it in a more sustainable and livable and democratic form. And this is what we've been doing with meetings and convergence processes like the World Social Forum of Transformative Economies, which is in the long tradition, let's say, of the World Social Forums, but more focused on the practices, alternative practices, transformative practices, and movements and social movements that participate in the creation of a new vision of the economy. So many networks took part of this, from networks working on the commons, to networks working on agroecology, feminist economy, ethical finance, fair trade, and cooperative networks, et cetera, to social movements led, for instance, by international organizations such as ATTAC. What was or is, because this is an ongoing process, the focus of such a convergence? The idea is that we want to transform different levels together. So each one has a different approach. You have the degrowth approach, you have the transition towns, you have many different ways of and ideas to change. But altogether, we are looking at changing the power structures from concentrated power and ownership to distributed responsibilities and power. We want to change the way knowledge and culture are co-created and transmitted instead of enclosed and limited. We want to change the economy and the finance from a profit, growth, extractive, destructive basis to a regenerative and resilient form that puts communities and people's needs and rights at the center. And of course, and not last, the relationship with nature, which really has to be transformed. So when I sort of try to explain what all this then means, well, we start from where we are today. We have a whole series of crises. I don't have to repeat this because you've heard this many, many times. But we also have people who are more aware of what is happening. In Chile last year, but also around the world in the last few years, there's been a lot of reactions of young generations to what has been the consequences of the financialization of the economy and the globalization of our systems and the loss of democracy. And these movements are, of course, in protest and against, but what we're doing is building on that resistance to find what other solutions we can find. And doing this, we have to put together the solidarity element with the democratic element. So it's very important that we find ways of rethinking how we organize communities, how we organize enterprises and exchanges and the economy, and self-management and self-organizing is one of the sort of basis for this, as well as a commons-oriented approach. So this what has been explained before very well. We have to go beyond the idea of the public as state and state-owned, and look more as the public as a specific forms of of the public as communifying them so that they are cared for and steered by the communities that can manage them. And again, we're going from a egotistic form of economy and very anthropocentric to a different form, which is much more holistic and inserted in the idea of Mother Earth and the environment of which we are part, and not separated, as we learn in this system. Again, a very important part is also the feminist approach that has showed us that we are only looking or only learn about a very small portion of the economic system, which is only that which is valued through an exchange with money, but everything else doesn't even appear. And that is instead the foundation of our society and of our systems. So a different form of economy is centering on the human needs. And that's where we're getting closer to, I think, what URBiNAT is doing, and how we can consider all these different aspects to come together. And even though we use the word economy, we mean a much larger concept, which is maybe more in the original concept of economy, the caring of our space, the caring of our house, meaning of our community. And there are many different ways to build alternatives in the urban space or the peri-urban space. And as I was saying at the beginning, the connection between and the regeneration of the rural spaces. So for instance, just the first example is the relocalizing and recreation of food supply chains. This means that we are reconnecting the consumers in the cities to the producers right around, and creating a relationship that is a long-term trust relationship, not just an economic exchange. And so for many other different forms of alternative practices. How much time do I have? 2 minutes, 1 minute?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So quickly, in a sort of list, each one of these would have, we could open a whole discussion, but if we want to look at a post-growth system that is future capable, then we have, yes, to relocalize production where possible, and take the marketing element out of distribution. We have to look at collective and shared ownership and integrated circuits. So the whole ecosystemic design has to be inside that. And the participatory co-construction of this is also very important. So let me go towards what we mean by this. We mean, on one hand, decommodifying some basic assets, land, labor, money, and knowledge. So for instance, money, we have to regain control on money, and we can do it relocalizing it with local currencies, for instance. Land, separating the property of land with community land trusts and similar forms. Labor, have forms of labor that are always more cooperative, and less separation between who owns the means and who is employed or uses them, etc. But we also need to redesign cities so that they are spaces that can be cared by and managed by the communities that live there through urban commoning, and at the same time regenerate through agroecological practices the countryside. Now, as European, now I'm bringing the networks back in. So we collaborate with several networks in different campaigns or initiatives that try to bring together these practices. For instance, Transformative Cities is a way of highlighting some of the more successful initiatives around the world, but also in Europe, of course, where we're working with Friends of the Earth, Ecolese, Transnational Institute, and others. And there's an Atlas of Utopias, concrete utopias, that is growing in each year with these stories of how they were able to do it. We're collaborating to bring the alternatives to be easily searched for and found through platforms like Transiscope, which is a map of maps and brings them together. We work with Fair Trade, Cooperative Alliance, Wellbeing Economy, and others to influence the recovery plan so that it is going in the right direction. Not easy thing to do, of course. Working with researchers and practitioners for how to design sustainable and just cities. Urban Arena is, for instance, a space where this is happening, very, very interesting. Working in platforms like Right to the City, where we define what it means to have cities that are open and re-democratized and fulfill their real functions. Work with municipalist movements, a new generation of political engagement that brings civic activism in the governments of cities. And it's important that this new generation has a continuous interaction with social movements or economic movements as ours. And work on climate justice, which is also at the basis of many of our regenerative initiatives. And we need to look at how this global issue is translated in local policies at the local level through the connection between the different movements. So this is a bit, and there are other initiatives, but I have to finish here. But I'll just tell you about this one, which will happen in September. Ecolese and other networks are leading it on sustainable communities. It's important because it underlines the active protagonist role of that communities can have, and bringing them together, they create a stronger voice. And we want to reclaim from the European Union the recognition of these communities that work with energy, work with many different forms of re-empowering, in the real sense, citizens. So I'll finish here. Thanks.
Super, thank you, Jason. That was a very pragmatic approach, which I think we all appreciate as well. Especially I, as a city representative, find it very inspiring also to hear about these networks. I propose we take a 5-minute break here, because I think we've all had our heads full with a lot of things. And then we come back and have Luciana's presentation just afterwards. So a 5-minute break. I believe the 5 minutes are basically over. We'll hope that everybody is back in their seats, even if they are hidden behind cameras and muted mics. I'd like to present now Luciana Lucas dos Santos, who I believe is back. Yes, I do not see her. Beatriz, do you see if Luciana is here?
Luciana is here, but her camera is I will check. Luciana is here? No. I will send a message.
It's not back yet.
1 minute.
Okay.
She has 1 minute more.
Perfect. Then we will give her the extra time.
Luciana is here, Leticia.
Perfect. Finding back my notes. So Luciana will present to us on urban regeneration and minority women, so the more feminist perspective, and discuss how solidarity economy can contribute to environmental justice within the urban space. Luciana is a researcher at the Center for Social Studies of the University of Coimbra at SESH, and is part of the research group on democracy, citizenship, and law, and member of URBiNAT's Scientific Commission. She has a PhD in communication and culture from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro and a master's degree from the same institution. She has since then pursued an academic career as an assistant professor at the State University of Rio de Janeiro. She currently co-coordinates the research group on democracy, citizenship, and law, and is a member of the staff in the PhD program. She is a visiting professor at the Federal University of Southern Bahia in Brazil, and is part of the doctoral program staff. Her current research interests are feminist economics, feminist aesthetics, post-colonial feminisms, post-colonial studies on consumption and economics, poverty and social inequalities from an intersectional perspective, and European identities and the otherness with a capital O. Luciana, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Leticia. If you can give me a sign when 5 minutes is lacking, I would appreciate.
Perfect, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Well, despite the relevance of solidarity economy for URBiNAT project's goals regarding urban regeneration and environmental justice, I think that there are some previous concepts we needed to discuss for a proper reference of the solidarity economy contributions, either it be in epistemological or pragmatic issues. Thus, I aim to divide my speech in 4 parts. The first one has to do with the very concepts of urban planning, regeneration, and landscape production from which we depart, in the sense that landscape in itself should be or not a way to build the right to the city. It depends on the prevalent meanings that the landscape design will provide. It depends on its capacity of communicating plurality or predominance of a particular view of the city. It means that it's not enough to provide access for the ones who have been excluded or gated. In other words, that very aesthetic sense brought to the scene in a regeneration project should depart from the heterogeneity of European societies in contrast to the prevalent social imagery of homogeneity between and within European countries. The second aspect to be stressed has to do with the connection between minority women and the production of the space, considering that architecture and urban planning should challenge not only the prevailing senses of gender roles, but also the way this latter has neglected the heterogeneity of women and the different constraints they might face in the urban spaces. The third aspect is grounded on the role played by solidarity economy within a project concerned with environmental justice, URBiNAT, the URBiNAT project. Which arrangements and experiences could be fostered? How might they be connected with active citizenship? And how can active citizenship be related to the idea of more resilient communities instead of dependent ones? The fourth and last aspect has to do with the uncertainties we have faced in the current times, if we can get there. How can solidarity economy be of help to deal with challenges such as the pandemics, the scarce resources, the lack of food of hydric sovereignty, to name but a few? So let us start. Which could be an architecture and urban planning closer to the heterogeneity of people they are expected to serve. Yesterday I was reading two papers written by a Brazilian architect and colleague, Andrea Moassab, where she was debating the need for decolonizing architecture. Grounded on Sérgio Ferro, she reminds us that the concrete results in Latin America from the crisis experienced in the building sites as a response to trade unions. After all, concrete does not require bricklayers and carpenters. Her work demonstrates how a field of knowledge, in this case the architecture, might veil other relevant and ancestral building technologies, and she gives the example of the Andean people's knowledge on anti-seismic structures. Analyzing the construction sites in Brazil, Moassab compares them to the new galley ships, having in mind the overrepresentation of black workers in the building sector and the unbearable work conditions they have faced. What do these papers have to do with our talk today? First and foremost, that is not enough to discuss what could be a different and alternative economy. It's also necessary to interrogate all the process supporting the materiality which surrounds us. That is to say, a political economy of materiality is needed, in such a way to debate how dependence of countries, but also of social groups, minorities might be built and fed by naturalized everyday decisions that we have not to question anymore. The choice of the concrete is just one of them. We should interrogate more and more the fields of knowledge on which we have grounded our policies and projects, promoting a kind of post-colonial archaeology of knowledges: architecture, economics, history, engineering, landscape designing, and so on. An architecture and urban planning closer to the heterogeneity of social groups recognize the relevance but also the invisibility of some popular knowledges, question the usual patterns of the buildings set for the poor, challenge the gauge of what is considered as appropriate in terms of building materials, in terms of the gender roles associated with the public-private spaces, in terms of what we have understood as inclusiveness. The social and popular compromise of the architecture and urban planning should not be limited to fight against the real estate speculation and its consequent gentrification and privatization of the space, or still to forge tailored and cheaper solutions for groups that have faced exclusion in the public sphere, in the public spaces, absence of proper housing policies or housing segregation on the other. It's more than that. In this age of diversity and migration flows all over the world, concerns with environmental and social justice will also require from us, instead of ready-made solutions, the proper recognition of other rationalities in residential construction, in the organization of the space, and in the handling of locally available and scant resources. So I would like to quote an excerpt of Moasabi and Nami regarding 4 important roles by landscape architects and landscape designers. First, demanding public policies, and I'm quoting, for the expansion of leisure spaces and environmental amelioration in racially and socially segregated territories. Second, incorporating in their projects forms of sociability for these groups, resignifying topologies and uses. Third, understanding that in segregated areas the production of public open spaces enables the expression of marginalized cultures in other spaces, expanding the possibilities of political awareness. Finally, having the projective design align with an ecology of landscapes, with the agroecology, and with the infrastructure projects regarding the very landscape, such as the slope stability, rainwater micro-drainage, etc., aiming at the environmental regeneration and the distribution of ecosystem functions concurrently with the containment of risks. Landscaping thus becomes a vehicle for the right to the city in terms of social inclusion and environmental equity. And I finish the quotation. I argue that solidarity economy might be of help regarding these 4 goals, contributing to the expansion of leisure spaces and popular economic arrangements capable of reinforcing communities' autonomy. Solidarity economy also reinforces the sociabilities which result from these economic arrangements. For example, exchange fare for simultaneously exchanging surpluses and constituting a collective kind of storage to face individual scant resources. Solidarity economy can also contribute to stimulating collective forms of regenerating the environment and building popular houses or risk mitigating measures through collective work. So let us go to the second aspect, the one of gender and production of the space. It's worth questioning the ways through which public sphere has been gendered and caused material constraints. I will depart from the usual constraints experienced by Black women, particularly the Afro-European women. Discussing the material constraints experienced by these women in European countries requires the understanding of previous asymmetries affecting the conditions of belonging, moving, and providing themselves well-being. These conditions to which I refer might be affected, for example, by their overrepresentation in low-paid jobs, by their overrepresentation in night shifts, when the public transport is lacking. These conditions could be affected by the housing segregation, which means employability constraints, or the way they are always read as immigrant bodies and not as national citizens, situation that could be aggravated by statistical vagueness. These conditions might be also affected by the way Black women are perceived in Europe, but not only, by educational systems, credit institutions, social welfare states, public services, and potential employers. It's worth debating the veiled racialization of the space, which means different ways for minority groups to experience the space and to constitute their speciality and mobility along the city. It's not possible to discuss challenging perspectives of urban planning without considering the everyday material constraints many minorities face regarding spatial segregation, lack of public transport, lack of proper public street lighting systems, distance from important public equipments, lack of public day nurseries for their children. If the usual victims of high levels of violence and harassment in the public spaces are women, since the bodies of women are contradictorily taken as a public issue, Black women have dealt with a higher level of harassment, not only because racialized bodies have been hypersexualized, but also because these women have faced precarious safety conditions in their mobility along the city. Minority women have witnessed this mismatching between their needs in terms of mobility and the use of the public space, and use the public space in an urban planning and landscape design that have been gendered and sometimes racialized, not to say produced according to medium-class lifestyles. Building up a city for all through an urban planning concerned with social and economic justice requires reflecting upon how impoverishment, shortage of public equipment, and racial segregation have been intertwined. Because if it's true that all of us will be affected by big issues, and it is, such as climate change, disease outbreaks, water crisis, the rise of global food prices, and the growth of the far right and its politics of fear, it's also true that their material effects have been inequitably distributed by people over the world. Black and poor people, but also Roma people in Europe and migrants in a non-recognized heterogeneous Europe, are the ones who have been gated in the valued areas with higher levels of toxic waste, industrial pollution, and landfills. They are the ones who have faced the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 pandemic in many countries. They have also been neglected with regard to public policies. It's thus important to have an attentive look at the usual unequal partition of the burden of growth. How much time do I have, Leticia?
Only 2 minutes left.
2 minutes? Okay.
Yeah.
So I will have to change. So, solidarity economy in this, in regard to this, may be connected with different goals. Fighting against poverty, but also stimulating different patterns of consumption and reducing environmental impact due to long-distance trade. By valuing communities and people's knowledge, solidarity economy could be understood as collective economic arrangements devoted to production, consumption, savings, distribution, and trading activities in urban or rural areas. Solidarity economy also tables some principles that are relevant for social and environmental justice projects: autonomy, solidarity, shared management, and associativism, a group of citizens who gather to do something for their own collectivity or for the community at large. There are many economic solidarity initiatives in European context devoted to foster articulation between citizens in the neighborhood, develop an economy of proximity, reduce mass distribution impact, and reinvigorate public spaces. I would like to stress, for example, the role played by the short supply chains. They are economically important to the territory for reducing the environmental impact of long-distance freight transport and dependence on large stores. However, they are also crucial for articulating consumers towards different patterns of production and producers, in turn, towards a different level of consumers' compromise on seasonable crops. In addition to these short supply chains capable of reinforcing the local economy and the resilience of communities, I also stress edible gardens, community ovens and kitchens, community gardening, community repair shops, complementary currencies for exchanging goods and services at solidarity fairs, fair trade, and community-based involving savings. I would have many other things, but I would like to emphasize the following. Which more could be provided by solidarity economy? Solidarity economy could also contribute to forge active citizenship, an issue that has been valued by European funding sources. However, active citizenship cannot flourish in the presence of a non-communicative strategy of supporting people in their needs. Active citizenship means preparing people to actively participate in more resilient communities, and resilient communities in turn require simultaneously autonomy and participation. Nevertheless, participation has been more a buzzword rather than something that we have stimulated in local and national development projects. It's important to consider the minorities' condition of really participating and negotiating meanings in the consultation process when they do exist. It's important to bear in mind minorities' prior unequal conditions of voicing points of view due to the persistent devaluation of their perspectives on one side and the word-oriented approach which neglects other forms of communicating dissent on the other. It means that sounding out opinion is not enough to be taken as participation. Participation requires openness to refusals and divergency. It also demands, first and foremost, time to build confidence and balanced conditions for minorities to voice their views. To end up, I argue that organizations should also pay more attention to other spaces for political action, which might be under the radar. These parallel discursive arenas, in the sense proposed by Nancy Fraser, constitute spaces for political debate and action while forging alliances and providing subaltern groups with visibility and improved circulation of their symbolic assets. These subaltern counterpublics, as Fraser has named, do not correspond to the commonplaces associated with the public sphere, social movements, NGOs, media, political parties, and so on. They are informally constituted in the peripheries of the South or in the South of the North. To Fraser's argument, I would like to add, and I end up here, the materiality of these subaltern arenas as they have forged strategies to stimulate the production and the internal circulation of peripheral cultural goods, peripheral literature and poetics, graffiti, hip-hop, and here we have again the solidarity economy and its contribution to political awareness on one side and the economic circulation of cultural goods on the other side. Culture is other issue that might be addressed by solidarity economy arrangements. And I would like to really end up recalling that it's important for third sector and social economy organizations to keep an eye on inequalities and opportunity to proper inclusion within national and European public spheres. As organized the civil society, these institutions are expected to do it. However, they should be equally attentive to these other informal arenas and assume, regarding to them, a welcoming approach, as they have constituted an important lever for resilient communities. And this idea of resilient communities should not be uncoupled from the active participation of different social groups in the designing of the expected betterment of the urban space and of the landscape which surrounds us. Thank you.
Thank you, Luciana. That was a very rich contribution. And I look forward to discussing especially the feminist approaches as it's something that I'm trying to integrate within the Brussels case. We'll move on quickly now to Rogerio. I'm not sure how, sorry if I'm butchering your name, but Rogerio Roque Amaro from ISCTE, who will present on solidarity economy, community development in the commons to rethink the production of public space. Rogerio is an associate professor from the Department of Political Economy at the Institute of Lisbon, the University of Lisbon, and member of the URBiNAT Scientific Commission. He has a PhD from the Université des Sciences Sociales of Grenoble, He is coordinator of economy and globalization at the Center of International Studies. He teaches in the areas of development and social and solidarity economy, is president of the Scientific Council and a founding partner of the Center for Studies for Solidarity Economy of the Atlantic at Ponta Delgada, and director of the Review of Solidarity Economy. He is also founder of RedPes, a Portuguese network for solidarity economy. Rogério, you have 15 minutes again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to be here with you and to learn more with you, and to also to see some of my friends. So I ask Beatrice to help me to this presentation because I have problems with my computer. So I'd like to share with you some lessons from my practices in the field of community development in Portugal. And so I'll try to share with you two main theses. Next slide, Beatrice, please. So my two main theses of these reflections are that in the framework of the three tragedies we are living now, the solutions that we knew from 20th century are not able to respond to these problems, to solve these problems. So the second thesis is that we need a third protagonist, is the community, and the return of this protagonist allows us to reformulate a new model of regulation, a new kind of public space, and also a new concept of economy. Next slide, please. So I'd like to share you 7 points. First of all, to talk a little about the current tragedies we are now living in our situation. Second point is to show how the solutions of the 20th century are not good for these tragedies. The third point is what is the return of community. The fourth point is how the return of community propose a new kind of economy. The fifth point is how the combination between community development and solidarity economy gives a new life of commons. The sixth point is talking about some examples of this. And the last point is some reflections, some final reflections. So next slide, please. So when I'm talking about three tragedies, I'm talking about these ones. The first tragedy is a tragedy of indignity. This is a structural tragedy because it's a tragedy of poverty, of social exclusion, of psychosocial exclusion, unemployment, and so on. And this tragedy was aggravated by COVID-19, but it existed before. The second tragedy is the tragedy of unsustainable life. This tragedy, it existed before the COVID-19, and of course, one of the dimensions of this tragedy is the environmental dimension, but there are other dimensions like cultural, political, and so on. And it's true that COVID-19 has ameliorated this tragedy. And the third tragedy is tragedy of COVID-19, which is a health issue, but has implications in all dimensions of our lives. So the next slide. Of course, as I said before, the COVID-19 aggravated the tragedy of indignity, but ameliorated the tragedy of unsustainability at a certain point, of course, not at all the dimensions of this. But, next slide, please. The solutions that we knew from the 20th century are not good enough to solve these three tragedies. First of all, because the market was one of the factors, one of the main causes of these three tragedies. So we can speak about the market tragedy, of course. Second reason, because the state, because in the 20th century, we talk mainly about the market or state, the two protagonists of the solutions, and the second protagonist of the solutions of the 20th century, the state, has been insufficient to respond to these tragedies. But it has been very, very important, essential even, in responding to the tragedy of COVID-19. So we can underline the importance, the essential of the state in responding these problems, these challenges. But it's not enough. So to the 21st century, we need another model of regulation. We need another kind of answers, of solutions. And this is for this because there is another protagonist. Just to add, just to have some additions to these two protagonists of the 20th century. Next slide, please. So, in a lot of situations, of circumstances, we can observe, we can see that for all of these tragedies, the role of the community has been very important, even essential, in providing answers for the problems, in facing the challenges of these tragedies, especially where the market is the cause of the tragedies and fails, and especially also where the state doesn't reach the problems, that doesn't reach the places, the regions in which the problems appear. In these circumstances, we can observe in a lot of situations in all the countries that the community has been able to present solutions, has been able to have solutions for the problems. This is my experience. I can tell this because I can share you about this, because I live these situations in Europe, mainly in Portugal, of course, but also in Africa, in Latin America, less in Asia, but also in Asia. So I can talk about this because I know, because I live these experiences in which communities have been able to have solutions, to build solutions to the problems caused by the market, and to which state was not enough to respond. So we can talk about the return of community. This is the next slide, please. But what is this return of community? In fact, this return of the community we can talk about this in the situations when there are problems of unemployment, problems of poverty, problems of social exclusion, problems of minorities, problems of domestic violence, problems of discrimination of women, and so on, and so on, and so on. In local situations, in villages, in neighborhoods, so in rural and urban situations, and when the market was the cause of this, and when the state was very, very far to respond to the problems. I remember a situation in Portugal, for instance, in which the unemployment of 100 people, that was a tragedy, a local tragedy for this village. And when they asked for a solution to the state, in Lisbon, the answer was that 100 of unemployment is not statistically very important. So they have no solution for this. They have no micro solution for this. They want to have national solutions. And the solution that the community was able to build was to try to have a local solution with the participation of the community, because the state was unable to present a solution. So in these cases, the community with the local institution were able to identify the situation better than the national authorities. The community was able to claim and fight for a solution, was able, if necessary, to construct, to build collective responses, to decide, to discuss and to decide and to build local responses, was able to evaluate, to present a collective evaluation of the process, and with this process to strengthen its participation, to strengthen the local citizenship. So we have a lot of situations like this, and I know a lot of them in all these countries. Next slide, please. So we can talk about the concept and the practice of community or local development with 10 points. The 10 points are there in the slides, so it's not necessary to read them, just to save some time. But all the points are there. They try to systematize to summarize these experiences, these practices, and the points that are more important are the participation of people, the empowerment of community, and the partnership, the local partnership, and of course the results for responding the needs of the people, of communities. Next slide, please. With these experiences in urban places and also in rural places, community development stimulates and favors the emergence of cooperative economic initiatives, face-to-face economy based on reciprocity, based on solidarity, based on democracy, and based on the promotion of local resources. it means that there is a connection, a very interesting connection between local and community development and solidarity economy. Next slide, please. When you talk about this solidarity economy promoted by communities, by local communities, we are talking about all these points, all these 9 points of this concept, of this practice, of this experience. This is more a lesson from practices than a theoretical deduction. This is more inductive than deductive. We are talking about an economy, a plural economy, with a social project, with a cultural dimension, with an environmental worry, with a very, very connection, a very important connection to community development, which produces new knowledges by authors, not actors, by actors, not authors, based on democracy and with a new kind of ethic program. Next slide, please.
1 minute, please, Rogelio.
Okay. So this combination between community development and solidarity economy gives a new life to the commons. And this new life to the commons open a new future. We are talking about the commons as a co-activities, as initiatives mobilized, managed in common, like an experience of collective life, trying to open a common future. Next slide, please. These commons opened by this combination is able to propose a new regulation model named the shared and participatory local governance, with the involvement of community and with the partnership of local institutions, is able to propose a new concept of public space, a new appropriation of public space, where the public space, in fact, is assumed as a public common space, when the public is also community. And as I saw before, proposing also another concept and practice of economy. Next slide, please. So I would like to talk to you about 3 examples. We have no time to this, but they are there. So first example is a local neighborhood in Lisbon, the neighborhood in the eastern part of Lisbon, where a local association, a neighborhood association called Time to Change, fight to reconvert, to conquer a space, a public space to the community. And it was a very, very hard fight, but they won. Now this public space is a community space, just to the people, just to community activities and so on. And after this, they became a solidarity service to the people, to children. And this association now is also a solidarity initiative. The second experience is in another part of near Lisbon, in another neighborhood, in which a public office was appropriated by community and now is managed by the community. And in this office, they are building new economic activities concerning with solidarity activities. And the third experience is the experience that we have now in Lisbon with 15 community groups co-managing the city with the municipality. Is a very, very impressive experience. It's a very, very new experience in which 15 neighborhoods are involved. So I would like to go to the last slide, just to present some questions.
In 10 seconds, if you can.
For our reflection, but they are written there, so it's not necessary to read here now. So I finished my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And sorry for cutting you short. It's always a shame with these kinds of moments when we'd love to have more time, and that time would be expandable as much as possible. I saw that there were some questions emerging in the chat from Gonzalo and from Nathalie, amongst others. I urge you to continue to put your questions in the chat also, and for the speakers to respond directly in the chat if you feel like you will not have enough time to address all of them. I also prepared some questions, but I think I will start with one that Gonzalo posed, the first one, a question I think to Jose about impure orders, where he asks, is the impurity of the commons an opportunity actually to activate social and solidarity economy initiatives as key drivers for urban renewal? I think Jose is still here. If you'd like to intervene.
Yes, thank you. It's really not easy for me to think in terms of urban renewal. You know, this is there is a disciplinary problem in this. Anyway, my trying to not to fail addressing the issue. The question is in respect to urban renewal, there is space to think, I believe, in productive activities in the urban space based on the commons ideal. And if this is so, my point would be that a crucial question point is to articulate the commons perspective on the use of the public space, on the use of public resources, the commons perspective on the common use of common resources, with having in mind that above or mixed with this, with the commons, there are family economies which must be given the opportunity to use the common resources according to the rules democratically set up by the commons, in the perspective, in their own autonomous perspective of valuation of those resources. So my whole point was that the secret is in the mix, not in the search for well, to put it another way, the thing is maybe we don't have to choose between as I call it, separation or the market, the state, or command, as I call it, or even association or the commons. We don't have to choose. We probably should avoid that frame of reasoning about the issues with which are constrained. we don't have to choose, because probably mixing principles is where the wisdom is. Thank you. It's as far as I can go.
Thank you. Gonzalo, I don't know if you want to respond directly to this intervention.
No, thank you. It's great to hear all of you and on the issue of the commons. I think the interventions were complementary in some sense, and I believe the commons, as you described the baldios for us in Portuguese, they are a space of an opportunity in the cities, and in this urban regeneration process that we are working in the suburbs and in the periphery. The commons are an open space also for creativity, and as you described, the families, the associations, the individuals, they take these commons as opportunities for them. So and the problem in URBiNAT is, which is a project that has an institutional side with the municipalities, is to institutionalize these commons and take out these opportunities from the cities by our intervention. So it's a problem that we need to deal in order not to create an obstacle to the citizens' initiative.
Yeah, indeed. I think this tension that we have with the potentially paternalistic elements that URBiNAT has as an institution in itself and as an embodiment of an institution is something that we need to be very aware of, and the risk of co-opting actually also a lot of these practices that we are attempting to visibilize and therefore valorize, but somehow there is a risk also that we undermine them actually through this process. Yeah. So definitely something that we are aware of. Pedro, I think you raised your hand. Would you like to?
Yes, I would say something more about this point, and also with the question that Rogério put about the redefinition of public goods or public space or public in general, a new concept. What happens is that public goods are those that can be used by everyone without limitations. But in practice, common goods, public goods like gardens, parks, banks of the rivers in urban areas, they are governed by local state or local authorities, these goods were private. In this sense, if these public goods, like gardens or parks, etc., they are left aside, they are not cared by the authorities, and the neighbors wish to intervene and to ameliorate the situation, local government usually invokes their responsibility on that, and does not allow citizens to take care or to improve or to make new uses of them. And this is the difference between public goods and common goods. And the state deals with public goods as if they were private property and not public property. So there are examples. I remember one, it was in Bologna, Italy, where there was signed a pact between the local government, the government of the city, and the neighbors. They are called collaborative pacts. And it is very interesting because citizens are allowed, or neighbors are allowed, to improve as they wish this kind of public goods, parks or gardens, and the municipality assumes some costs of the transformation. For instance, it can be used machines from the municipality or professional from the municipality. Or for instance, one interesting activity on this of the neighborhoods, that was about graffiti in the walls of the city, and the neighborhoods, the citizens assumed the cleaning of the walls, and the municipality paid for the ingredients and the work necessary to do this. So there's a collaborative pacts between municipalities that in reality, or in fact, they consider the meaning of the public space is equated with common space. And I think that this is very innovative.
Thank you, Pedro. I think that Natalie put a link to this particular case in the chat for those who are interested in delving deeper into it. Luciana, I saw you nodding quite a lot. Would you like to intervene on this particular point before we move on to the next question?
Yes, I would like to comment some issues that Castro Caldas said about we don't have to choose. I totally agree with him. We don't have to choose. And I think that we should pay attention to the way we have had different combinations of the economic principles in Polanyian terms. And we have had very creative ways of putting these economic principles to dialogue. However, I think that we should take into consideration the power imbalance. The power imbalance sometimes is a problem that could be solved through resilience. But the fact is, resilience is not fostered. I mean, what we have seen, and I agree with Pedro Espanha, is a straitjacket implicated, imposed by the local authorities or national authorities and so on. And this straitjacket has weakened the resilience of the communities. And just to remember something that Beatriz had asked me to talk about is the pandemic. What the pandemic has teach us, that the market is not based on the needs of people, but on its own maintenance under the best possible conditions for it, that we cannot allow the market fluctuations and future uncertainties, as Rogério was saying, about the circulation of essential goods and assets determine our provision conditions. And indeed, we have allowed the market to define this for us. And that we needed to prepare ourselves for the times that will come, which means to reactivate the circles of mutual support, the common goods, the better use of common goods, and the rights that have maintained us all as a social body. This is how we will build ownership, resilience, and a strengthening of the local dimension. So I think that we need to pay attention to this power imbalance. And in the case of Portugal, it's something very strong. It's a point to have in mind, because here this state control is very tough. Thank you.
Thank you, Luciana. I think it was probably Pedro's intervention also that emphasized the debureaucratization of processes that would facilitate actually this potential emergence, or just things to happen in a spontaneous way that is indeed not straitjacketed by the economy. something that is very difficult to do in municipalities. Of course, I speak from experience. Yeah, it's a challenge indeed, and something that can be, I think, especially in the context of living labs, because there are these experimental places, at least tested out in order to convince our colleagues also that it is potentially something to do. Beatriz.
First, I'd like just to first thank you for all our presentation or communication, and to say something. The combination of different themes was purposely in this round table, because the idea is to explore some aspects around solidarity economy, such as commons, public commons, gender issues, inequalities, because it's important not to think the solidarity economy in terms of the practice, but also in terms of the political project based on the solidarity economy. For this reason, this panel sometimes seems some mosaico, it seems mosaico, but in fact it was purposely and is strategical for us, but not only for URBiNAT. Our intention is to share these knowledges with the other project or other sisters project has working in the cities and working in the urban spaces. So now our intention is to share this knowledge in different ways. Just to introduce and explain our options to organize this round table, and what is this round table is important to establish some concept and some critical perspective on the solidarity economy, and how solidarity economy can help us to rethink some aspects on urban space, in particular on this model urban regeneration. So I would like to make a question for Rogério in specific, because is here some partners from municipalities, Leticia and the others from municipality. So it's very important for us maybe to understand better how municipality can involve in this co-production model. And you mentioned it, the experience, co-management experience from Lisbon, with the participation of 15 community group with the municipality. You can talk about some challenges, barriers, and failures, not only the good aspects and positive aspects, but also the focus that Luciane and Leticia comments about the difficulty to implement this co-management models, and of course a co-production model. If you can refer some experience from Lisbon that you can help us to explore these issues from side, of course, from side of the municipality.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to join some reflections to the question put by José Maria, because I think that concerning these questions, these subjects that you are discussing here in this seminar, I think there are three things. There are other things, but I would like to underline three things that are very, very important to when we try to have new solutions, when we try to change our view of things, comparing the 20th century with the questions, with the challenges of the 21st century. The first thing is to change from a disjunctive paradigm to a cooperative paradigm. It means it's more important to say and than or. This is the certain point, the answer to José Maria, because in fact we must integrate, we must join things, not separating things. Of course, it means that we must have new meanings for the things, a new meaning for market, a new meaning for state, and so on. But the best answer is to say and to act with and not with or. So the best solutions are also big solutions, plural solutions, and so on. This is the first thing. Second thing, concerning exactly this point, I think it's very, very important to have to our visions, to our reflections, the protagonism of community. In the 20th century, we have abandoned the community. We have talked about state and about private institutions like markets. And the community was completely abandoned. In fact, community was rejected by the market and rejected also by the state. The case of Baldius in Portugal is a very good example of this, because Baldius were privatized and they were also criticized and abandoned by the state. And it was important that the communities have a lot of fights against this, and they won because they want to have to have a new law of Baldius, and Portugal is almost one of the countries that have a law of Baldius in Europe. And this is very, very important, because it means that in the past we can find new solutions for the future. We can have new Baldius, new urban Baldius in Portugal now. The third thing is a new concept of public. For a lot of us, public is the monopoly of state, is the action of state, but public is also the field of community. So you must have a new meaning for public. Public is a partnership between state and community. It's a new concept and a new practice. So concerning exactly this last point, I'm trying to answer Beatrice's question, because now in Lisbon, we have a very, very interesting experience. And this experience began with the creation of community groups in the 90s. I was there. This is an experience in which I was involved. Nowadays, we have 15 community groups in social housing neighborhoods. Community groups are platforms, informal platforms, in which community residents, local associations, parents associations, and so on, with local services like schools, like health centers, like private institutions, social centers, and so on. Once a month, once per month. Today I will have one of these meetings, because these meetings are every month. And once a month, we are discussing the problems of the neighborhoods. We are fighting for solutions, or we are building solutions ourselves. This is a very bottom-up experience of citizenship, and it's very, very, very interesting. Because we have a network of these community groups. There are 15 in Lisbon, in the city. There are more in the urban circle, but 15 in the city. And now we won a very important thing, because two departments of the municipality of Lisbon accepted the existence of these community groups and accepted the idea to co-manage some of the problems of the city. I give you some examples. The two departments are the Department of Urban Hygiene and the Department of Local Development, Housing and Local Development. And now we are trying to study with the jurists, with the experts in law of the municipality, how to sign a new kind of contract between the community groups which are informal. This is a very challenge for the law, and the municipality. We are calling this a new protocol of public common thing, like we have in Baldius, in which the local assembly is not formalized, but it is recognized by the law. So we are trying to transfer this idea to our community groups. And you are studying this with the experts of the municipality that who deal with the law, with the juridical terms. But it is very, very important, because we have the interest of one of the responsible, political responsible, Dr. Paula Marques, that are engaged in discovering a solution for this, a juridical solution for this. This is a new Baldiu, an urban Baldiu. What are the effective problems, the specific problems in which we are already doing this? There are three problems. First of all, the garbage collection, the waste collection. Because we have problems of urban hygiene in Lisbon, the municipality recognized that it is important to have the involvement of people, of community, because we must have better collection of the waste, but we must also have best behaviors about this. So we must change the technical solution, but also the citizen solution. So we are trying to do this collectively. We are trying to do this as a co-management of this problem. This is the first thing, the first example of this. The first example of production, a new kind of management of the city, a co-management of the city. Second example, we have housing problems in Portugal, in Lisbon, social housing. And some of the people that have great problems to have a house have try to occupy houses that are not occupied. So we have a legal problem, because a lot of gypsy people, of Rome people, have occupied social houses, municipal houses. Instead of looking for this like a problem of law, we are trying to look at this like a social and political problem. And so for the first time, we fight to have a community solution, and the president of the Lisbon municipality accepted that we have created a group, that we have created a group to work this situation, to try to have solution of this situation. So now, with representatives of the community groups, we are, next month, we will propose solutions for this. But for the first time, the responsibles of the municipality, they want to have the opinion of the communities, to have the opinion of the community group. They accepted this idea to manage one of the most complicated problems of the social housing in Lisbon. So this is a new situation. This is another example of co-management. The third example, and it's enough for this seminar, I think. I think you know that in social neighborhoods, we have also offices, municipal offices that in general are people who want to open economic activities or to open associative activities. They try to have these offices who are managed by the municipality. For the first time, the management of this process will be a partnership between municipality and community groups. It means that the community groups will have a position, will have, they will participate in the decision to allocate these offices to the candidates. This is the first time that we have this in Lisbon. So there are three examples, the concrete examples of this. We are doing this in Lisbon now.
Very enriching. I will not elaborate a little more on this topic because I wanted actually to ask a last question to Jason before we wrap up, because we're already over time. But I find it's fascinating because we talk about community, of course, and community often has this association to territoriality. And so we assume that you have to be geographically proximate in order to constitute community. And I think Jason really highlighted the fact that community can be created beyond territoriality. And I think URBiNAT is also within the consortium an example of that. And so I was wondering how to create also common goods, perhaps within beyond territorial communities. And there was also a question in the chat regarding your experience with multi-stakeholder fora and networks, whether you can highlight some critical issues with these kinds of experiments between different actors that don't necessarily manage to communicate with each other. And perhaps if you have some advice also to close off then.
Okay, I will try very, very quickly. There was a mention of the Bologna Collaborative Pacts and Regulation, which I have experienced since it's the last years. It has expanded in several cities in Italy, more than 200, including Florence. The Forum for the Commons of Florence, of which I'm part, has worked to imagine how to translate the experience of Bologna in our context and territory. And the local government made a regulation as well, and making some things better than the Bologna one, but some things less interesting for us. So there's always a critical aspect of, in any case, the last word is on one side, and who is in government is of course stronger, and for in a certain sense justly so, because they represent the whole community, the whole population, and not just a portion of it. But at the same time, the weakness of these solutions is that when the governments change at the local level or even at the regional level, that may put into questions the pacts or the agreements that have been reached. There's also an issue of the machinery, the bureaucratic machinery of local governments, that sometimes is very unflexible, and that means that the community groups need to also have on their side lawyers or advisors that can help them argue and have a good answer for when obstacles are set out, because you cannot do this. There's responsibilities that need to be shared or that are only of the public state part, etc., etc. Another also very important aspect, critical aspect, is access to information, and many times citizens and groups of citizens don't have access to the information for their own, for what would be their own benefit, let's say, on how to do things, on how to interact, on how to request. And this is also an obstacle to developing these public community partnerships that we were talking about. There are many existing legal tools that you can use or force in some way to innovate, but the expertise and the capacity many times of groups of people, of neighbors, of people who are many times in situations of need and that cannot dedicate the time or don't have the access to the knowledge, makes it, again, difficult to apply something. So it's not enough to have a law that recognizes or a legal tool that allows. There has to be an enabling environment and a political will to do that, and that needs political fights and capacity to be heard, to be listened to. So I think this is the mutual learning is where the networking comes in. I think learning from what other communities have done, learning from how the people that have obtained things that Rogerio was talking about before, for instance, how they did it, and maybe in a similar context than what you have in other places, because what I heard, I could echo very easily to similar situations here, even if it weren't the Roma people, in our case, maybe some migrant community from Somalia, that are refugees community, or some other community that are trying to have the same kind of thing. That could help, because we could, but of course there's language barriers, there's knowledge barriers, there's a lot of different things that networks can help to mediate or overcome, and that's a bit I think the role that, together with social solidarity economy, examples of practices can really promote real and effective change. So there's no one solution. Again, we need to really case by case adopt different things, but we can and we should look around us beyond our territory. And today, fortunately, we have many tools online in our phones that make this kind of information more accessible, and that can allow for local communities to become more translocal, let's say, in this sense.
Great, thanks. I think I can definitely echo with this idea of the need to create an enabling environment. And I think what at least the local diagnostics process in Brussels has shown in URBiNAT is that creating this environment of trust, which was also a word that came up a couple of times in the presentations, and having actually this very human contact, which sometimes goes through conviviality in public space, etc., is is really actually what enables these kinds of relationships to grow and to become potentially economic relationships, but not just. And so I think focusing also on these diverse economies and the different practices that take place in public space is really a strength actually that URBiNAT can take the time to delve into a little bit, because we've been thankfully given the time thanks to the funding from the European Commission. So I think I will give the last word to Beatrice and Nathalie, unless there are any last comments.
Okay, thank you, Laetitia, for your moderation. Its panel was very wonderful, and I take some notes. I think there are many aspects that you need to provoke some reflections for us. And also again, thank you for the speakers, and thank you for Laetitia for the moderation. Before to finish this round table, I would like to ask for the audience if you can turn on your video to take a picture, just to register this moment. If not problem for the public, to put your camera on, and you take an image for register. Hello, Joana. Thank you, Joana from Porto Municipality.
Hi all. Thank you for the wonderful roundtable. Many thanks.
Thank you. So, Nathalie, can you ensure the print screen for the images? So, just Kamar, hello. Thank you to stay here with us. Okay, so just to finish one comment, I think many aspects is relevant, and the main aspects that is the focus of URBiNAT and the other projects. Also about the public goods and co-management and co-production also is the very structural aspects, because at the moment we discuss with the municipalities, the Nantes, Sofia and Porto, the possibility to implement committees, advisory boards or commissions, local commissions, that space that integrate citizens, association and municipalities representatives, and that is a space where it's possible to take decisions or to discuss the different aspects on health corridor. So, and my questions about the barriers, about the challenges for that is because it's in fact the co-production process in real context is a challenge. It's not easy. It's very complex. So, and this is important to discuss and the other experience, but it's important to review the different aspects and different challenges as part of the co-production. So that was very important for this moment in terms of experience with the municipality. In case of, in particular, for example, Sofia is discussing regulation, local regulation for that, and Rogério comments about the regulation, and it's interesting to know different experience for different contexts. I don't know if my colleague Nathalie would like to add something.
Just to thank you all the colleagues who took part to the event. Thank you, Tom and Antonia, for live streaming the event. Thank you so much. It was our first experiment doing this. I hope we will have a lot of them again. And thank you also for all these contributions, reinforcing the opportunity of having social and solidarity economy as a pillar of URBiNAT, bringing a critical perspective, most of all many critical issues to be discussed, and also inviting us to experiment new meanings that already exist around. So we only need to to change the mindset to take advantage of all these experiments.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, so just to, if I don't know, Gonçalo, would you like to say something to before finish the round of table?
Well, just to say that I think we have here a very interesting discussion to transfer to the cities, where we are trying to implement these solidarity initiatives, most of them proposed by the citizens. So I think we have here an opportunity to improve that discussion with the many perspectives that you brought, and I hope we can come back to you with the results of the activities that we are implementing in order to discuss them with you. I think in the next days we'll have also the opportunity to know more about what the cities are doing. So if you have the time, it will be great to have you on board. Otherwise, we will have also a publication that will give notice. But the next days will be also the possibility to know more about what is happening in the city. So it will be a very dense program, but in 3 days, I think we can manage to have everyone on board for more operative discussion in the next days. So thank you very much.
That is the next comment, that before the finish is to invite for the next round table on Friday, 4th. The idea is to discuss the social economy practice, or to focus more in the URBiNAT experience, or not, or the partners from in the city, in the URBiNAT cities, for in the case of Sofia, for example. So this round table we will moderate by Yuri Bruni from Community Siena, is the one follower city in the project. The idea is to discuss also, we will discuss the solidarity market, social currencies, but also the food, the cooperatives related to the food, relate to the food waste, in the relation with solidarity economy, and also the experience from Comida, advanced community gardens and short agri-food circuits from IAC from Spain. Also, Porto will present the different solutions related to the natural-based solution by Ana. Sofia will present networking, as Nadezhda Savova will present the bread house network, and Nuts will confirm, of course, that is the common situation, of course, because Nuts is at the moment with many activities, but we will provide some information about the solidarity economy aspects in Nuts metropolitan, and some public policies to support the solidarity economy initiatives existing there are in Nuts City. So the invitation for everyone to take part in this next round table. Thank you for everyone again, and see you on Friday.